Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Get Tech Smart. I am your host, Flo Nicholas. And if you're not used to this show, just a little brief about what I do. And I'm focused on emerging technology that's happening right here in New Hampshire so that you are aware of all the incredible companies and tech experts and all the lovely, incredible things that we are creating that are innovative right here in our state of New Hampshire. So today I'm really excited because I actually have UNH here. I have Najaraj Bukkapatnam, and I also have Andrew Mitchell from the Business Analytics Center. A lot to say here, so many words here. So a lot of people, when they hear business and analytics, maybe technology and innovation is probably not the first thing that pops up in their head. Can you briefly describe what is the Business Analytics Center at UNH?
You want me to start?
Sure.
So essentially, we kind of see ourselves as a bridge between industry and academics. And so what we mean by that is our students at the university, they need these real world experiences in technology and analysis and what have you. These businesses need those skills for their own work and for their own growth. So we try to pair those up in different ways. We have different collaboration methods. A lot of our focus, though, is we run more like a business. I think when people hear of maybe these university partnerships, they have this image of what that is or what that looks like. But we're really focused on sitting down with the business, sitting down with the client, figuring out what the problem is, and then working backwards to solve it with the resources UNH has. If UNH doesn't have it, we can also go elsewhere to our partners or our industry ambassadors, who are people that work all throughout.
All right, and we'll get into more detail in terms of what the step is. And Najaraj, what is your take on what the Business Center of Analytics is doing at UNH?
First and foremost, we are created with the vision of enhancing the experiential learning for the students, creating a knowledge hub that can bring industry and academics together, and seamless flow of information, seamless flow of ideas that will help build a bigger ecosystem that will benefit the New Hampshire as a whole.
Right.
The beauty is, as Andrew mentioned, even though we are part of this academic institution, we work like a startup. We ourselves are a startup. We were given one mission statement: create something which is creative, which is very innovative. Right? So we went and said, what do you mean by innovative? When you talk about business analytics, one of the questions we get constantly asked is, we understand what engineers do. We understand what doctors do. What do analysts do?
Right.
Right? That's the question that we get asked quite often. And we talk about how there's a huge transformation in terms of technology and the adoption. People talk about data, right? And how to use the data. We always feel that technology is a great equalizer and a differentiator.
Yeah.
And we always tell businesses, it is for anyone and everyone. In the good old days, when companies talked about technology, they were always like, oh, are you a Fortune 500 company? Do you have a budget? Do you have a team that manages? But there has been a paradigm shift in that. So when we talk about business analytics and about solving business problems, we are trying to create a mechanism through which any and every business can leverage the data, the technology, to make a difference to their business and to the ecosystem.
Yeah, you bring up so many excellent points. So, you guys know I'm part of the LinkedIn Accelerator program. And one of the things that we were asked to do is make a prediction of where we see technology in the future. And one of the things I actually included in there was data analytics. Because when you do the research, it's saying, the predictions are pretty much, hey, this is billion-dollar industry now. Everybody is talking about data. But I don't know if everybody really fully comprehends how to leverage that data and what they should be looking at. So can we get a little bit deeper in terms of you mentioned the partnerships with businesses. So let's get a little bit deeper into that. So I'm a small business.
Yep.
I'm a tech startup founder. I'm coming to you. What's the process and what are we working on? How can you help Flow?
So I would say what we typically do is we try to work backwards from what you're looking for, what your business problem is. So sometimes that's customers, right? It's wanting to get an assessment of who your market is, who your customers are. A lot of that is once you articulate the goal, you can actually work backwards to figure out what data points do we need to collect, what data points are already collected that we might be able to leverage, and kind of map out that strategy. And I think to your point that a lot of people maybe don't understand what it is. And that's one of the things we're trying to help with is to make people realize this isn't like a doctor in the sense that you can't have agency over your data if you don't have a degree or a specialized master's.
Right.
We collect data all the time ourselves, basic budgeting, basic
Right.
financial things. So a lot of it is we start at the very end. And I guess one example I'll give you, we were talking with a company, and I won't say the name, but talking with a company, it was actually a hospitality company, and they were really hit by, of course, inflation, right? Which is, I think, impacting pretty much anything and everything. So a lot of what they had to do was look back at their own data, even at the restaurant level, like what foods have we purchased? What are the cost differences between right now and 3 years ago? A lot of restaurants might not realize they're spending 30% more on X ingredient because they haven't had a chance to figure out their own data or look at it. So really, to get back to your central point, I think a lot of what we do is we want to establish with the client right up front that you're not priced out of this. This is actually, this data is here. You collect probably a lot of it already. And sometimes you just need that push to figure out a larger strategy around it.
And is there any discussions about trying to use some type of like automation or AI, for example, right? We're seeing a lot of AI software on the market, which is like, oh, I can pull your data and make reporting, super easy for your team. I guess what are you guys pushing in terms of helping? You mentioned the company that's in the hospitality industry. How are they able to maintain all that data and then do reporting to stay ahead or even make predictive analysis?
That's a great point. When you talk about data, we talk in anything and everything from ingestion to inference. So what it means is how are you creating the data? How are you storing it? Are you compliant? Are you securing it? Do you have the governance policies? So we work with in the businesses at every level. And we also try to introduce the technology pieces that can solve that problem. It's not about like giving you a good strategy and saying like, this is what you need to do and see you in like 3 years, right? We always go back and we have a very good partner network. We have big technology companies, good innovative startups in the technology space who build some very good products, especially for small and medium businesses and in some cases enterprises. So when we look at the ecosystem and say, you know what, if this is the problem, this business problem, we have this particular technology that is available that can solve the problem. So we are on one side, we are front-ending their needs. Behind the scenes, we are working with our partners to say, look, this will help you solve the problem. So when you talk about automation to AI, like we are looking at all the channels. And I'll give you a very simple example. There was one company that came to us. They collect a lot of data. They have a lot of customers who consume the data. Mm-hmm. The traditional models or the traditional platforms out there are very expensive or cost prohibitive in many cases, and they're having challenges trying to absorb that. During one of our visits to one of the conferences, we met a company that has very innovative like dashboard and visualization, analytics, and sharing platform. And we said, let's bring it in-house. And we said, we are going to do a proof of concept with our team. We are going to, since we know the business, we know the technology, we are going to evaluate through all the lenses and say whether this is a good fit or not. So that way, the companies are not front-ending the cost. They are not spending time or resources to understand whether the technology or the platform fits their needs. But we are doing that for them. And and we have a meeting with them in 2 weeks. We're going to present our findings, and if they like it and if it fits the bill, then they are going to adopt it.
Yeah, I like the fact that you guys do the proof of concept. So who's working on that? Do you guys get students at UNH and involved? Can you briefly describe that process?
Sure. Once we identify a business or a business problems, we go back to the drawing table and say what resources are required to solve this business problem. That's when Andrew comes in. He literally pounds the pavement. Like he goes across the universities because there are certain problems which are very focused on analytics. So we might need a couple of analytics students. In some cases, we had students from mathematics, statistics. I think we had even economic students working on some of the projects. So we source the team based on the business needs.
So you're using the students that are right there at UNH.
Yeah, and in some cases, we also involve faculty or researchers because the problems are very complicated. And another beauty is we have taken a different approach to helping the businesses. In a typical world, it's all about company. Even if you look at the businesses or the academia, they talk about constant collaboration.
Right.
We moved away from the constant collaboration. We call it a continuous integration. The difference is, first and foremost, companies don't have a fall problem or a summer problem. They always have some challenges.
Right.
How do you create a resource pool and say that we are here for you? We are supporting you both at the skill level and through the research level. So most of our programs or most of our projects transcend across. They can range anywhere between 6 weeks to 3 years.
Wow.
In some cases, the same students are working on these projects. So guess what happens? First and foremost, the two students are getting trained, like whatever foundational knowledge they receive in the classroom, they are able to experiment in the real world, like on the same day. Secondly, the companies are able to work with these students, and they're able to evaluate them on skills, technology, even cultural fit. And there are times, like we already have seen that success where the companies have already said, we're going to take these students in the future.
Oh, nice.
They are our future employees.
Yeah.
And we are like, you're welcome.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. Can you elaborate on that, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I think at a very fundamental level, the goal is, it sounds simple, but how do we most benefit the students and how do we most benefit the companies? And I think a lot of higher ed institutions, perhaps accidentally, it tends to be one-sided, right? Will you hire our students? Will you network with our students? Will you give our students internships? So our approach is we sit down and figure out truly what are your needs first. We'll worry about the students. They're just as important, but let's figure out your needs. We're not going to build a solution for you based on what our students need right now. We know we have the pool of students who will need this work. And so that goes a long way in terms of, I think companies feeling like there's a real give and take there. It's not just about, please hire our students, please do this for us, please donate a bunch of money to us. And I think that's actually one of the challenges we work around is there's that perception, I think in higher ed in general, that, it's all about donations or, immediate hiring, immediate jobs. And the reality is, as Nagaraj said, we're more about the slow integration and outcomes building up just based on the quality of work. I guess the other point I would mention with the students too is that the reality is at a very basic level, these students want to learn. They want to learn these technologies. They're already thinking about their career. The way we try to support them is we provide professional development too. This is outside of our partnership. So we actually pay for student analysts to go and do professional development. We went to a Google Analytics workshop recently. And we're constantly advocating for them as well, because we know the more you advocate for the students, the more they're going to advocate for the company, and vice versa. And so I think that's that's our model in a nutshell, is that sort of slow integration where results come over time.
So the students that are participating in the programs and working with the businesses, are you picking students who are like at a master's level, or like what is the makeup of the students who can work hands-on these programs?
So right now we have 15 student analysts, and those range from hourly paid to graduate assistantships. They really range mostly in the business sector right now. So it's economics, MBA students, business analytics students. We do have some computer science, some IT students we work with. That tends to be the reason we're emphasizing that right now is that's where our current need is with our clients. The reality is one of the things we joke about is business analytics is kind of like, it's kind of a cheat phrase because it bleeds into everything. Business analytics really touches everything. And so the reality is when these students go out into the world, they are not going to be on a team of 4 to 5 MBA graduates. They're going to be on multidisciplinary teams of writers, marketing, business, analytics. And so that's what we're ultimately trying to foster too is, mixing those teams so that that's how creativity happens and ideas get sparked.
Yeah, so I'm curious because it sounds like you guys work with a lot of businesses. Have you had any business just go from 0 to like $1 million valuation? And when that happens, like, how do you? I'm in my head. I think the lawyer brain is kicking in because I'm like, all right, you guys are helping these businesses, but what happens when this business blows up? And who? I guess I'm thinking IP rights. Are you getting a cut off, that $1 million? Because technically your students are working on these projects and they're helping these businesses. So how does that all work?
So we are bound by the UNH policy in terms of the IP. So whatever the university dictates, we are going to stick to that. We are not an incubator to say. We are an analytics center. So we haven't taken any equity or anything like that. We are year one. Like we started last August. So we are just over a year. I'm sure whatever you're talking in terms of future equity and $1 billion businesses, I see that in the roadmap, but we haven't started that yet. However, I want to say one thing. Since we are extremely focused, as Andrew said, right, how to maximize the benefit to the students and the businesses. We stretched our penny, I'll tell you that, to help both these parties, right? Like because students get paid as interns. No, there is no free student resource here. Everybody gets paid. Even with the businesses, we are trying to accommodate as many businesses as possible. We don't worry about the revenue, as you rightly said. There are startups to like small and medium businesses who are doing good revenue streams. They are engaged at different levels. We have no one solution fits all. We never say, hey, if you don't have $1 million check, we are not going to talk. We are always like, hey, tell us like how we can collaborate. And there are times businesses come to us and you know what, you have done such a good job. Like they wrote checks just like that. They just wrote a check and said, this is for the Business Analytics Center. And a couple of businesses came to us and said, hey, since you are building the platform, we're going to give you a percentage of the revenue. Yeah. So I said, yeah, we want you to become $1 billion company and give us $1 million instead of nickeling and diming you and saying, like, you didn't give me like $1,000, right? I said, we want you to grow. And that's what is happening.
So how are you kind of sorting through these businesses, right? Because everybody has an idea. Right, and there are so many startups here in New Hampshire. Our ecosystem when it comes to tech is pretty good.
Absolutely.
But how do you differentiate from, yes, we want to work with this, we see the potential, to, how do you let somebody down? Like, you might want to figure out something else. This is not going to be, something that's going to be a viable product or a solution, whatever the person has created.
So far, most of the businesses have been established, like they are small and medium businesses. Startups, we are just seeing startups coming on our ecosystem. But having said that, UNH has such a wide range of resources. Like even though we front-end a lot of discussions, if we see an opportunity, for example, there was a startup that was trying to come up with a product for trailers, and we knew that the center would not be able to handle that. So we introduced them to another center that does manufacturing. There's one more startup that wants to apply for the SBIR loans. So we introduced to UNH Innovation. So when we see an opportunity, we never let them go. We never or let them down. We always say, you know what, this is not our cup of tea, but we will make the connections for you. Currently, like right now, there's a company that I got introduced to some person in New Hampshire, and I said, you know what, if your company has to grow the way you are expecting, you should talk to SBTC. So I'm making that connection to the SBTC. So, but typically, many of the SBTC connections, many of the companies that come to us are through the New Hampshire SBTC.
Right. So they're kind of helping filter out some of the companies.
And as I said, right, like we are a startup. So initially, at this point, we are taking anybody and everybody.
Right.
Because as Andrew said, when you talk about data analytics, it can be applied anywhere. And to your point, right, when you talk about AIs of the world, it's not like 1950s where technology is explicit. Like until in the good old days, if you want a product or a service, you purchase a product or service. Right now, technology is influencing us implicitly. Whether you like it or not, Google's algorithm is deciding whether your business is getting featured or not.
Right.
It's for you to raise up and say, like, yes, we will adopt the technology, we will embrace it, and we will grow, we will be part of that, right? Growth. So we know that every business, we can help each and every business that's out there. And within our UNH ecosystem, we can find somebody who can help them too.
Yeah. And what are some of the big technologies that you're seeing? Because I mean, data analytics can be used with. I mean, we got lawyers using contracts now. That's the big thing with legal tech.
Right.
The contract data and making it easy for reporting. So, what are some of the big emerging tech that you're seeing that are using data analytics?
Yeah, well, and I'll let you speak more to the AI and machine learning. I think the reality is we're actually finding a lot of people maybe think their problem is more complicated than it actually is. So they think maybe they need AI or machine learning right away, when in reality they need some basic support even at the Excel level. And I mention that because one of the projects we did, and trying to quantify those results a little bit for you, one of the projects we did was with a firm that works out of Washington, D.C., and they manage data for the federal government. They work with data for the federal government. One of our earliest projects was figuring out a way, how do we take all these different data streams that are coming in through all these different ways that have to be manually processed, by somebody in the office. How do we automate that in a straightforward way? And that estimated, I think he said 45 to 55 hours a month.
Wow.
That sort of automation. So before I turn it over on the big innovations and big tech we're seeing, I think a lot of it is just data governance at a fundamental level. What do we have? Where do we go from here? What are some small tweaks we can make right now to have an impact on the business? Now, that said, of course, we're working with some larger firms too, and I think that's where these more cutting-edge, innovative things come into play.
Absolutely. When you talk about what we are seeing within New Hampshire, there's a lot of interest in AI. New Hampshire is known for precision manufacturing. So, and there are some innovative companies that are trying to leverage AI, solving some very interesting problems. Even before that, I think it's even safe to say that there are many companies that are trying to understand, like to Andrew's point, they have the data, they have the analytics, but how do you leverage them to the fullest extent? So they're talking about adopting cloud, right? How do you leverage the cloud infrastructure to make it cost effective and make it impactful? So those are the questions, those are things that we are doing. In general, right, if you look at the data analytics or this field, analytics to AI, if I may say, what we are seeing is there are the two trends. One is called, how do you leverage AI to gain better insights into data, right? So far, data has always been like very subjective, right? Everybody can look at the same data set and determine like what the story is. They're trying to make it more objective, and AI plays a very significant role. We have seen big technology companies investing in that, and now small businesses are leveraging that. For example, like one of the very important features that is coming up is called auto-narrative. Auto-narrative is AI's ability to look at the data and say what the data means in plain English. So that is one thing. The second thing is in terms of the governance. We are seeing what is called as embedded analytics. In the good old times, when you talk about data analytics, it was always left to quote-unquote stakeholders or executives in a company. But more and more firms are realizing that it is imperative for the data to be shared along their constituents, their employees, so that they can build a better data-driven organization. So how do you make that happen? How do you ensure that the data that we have in an organization is getting visible to the right party at the right people at the right time, right? So there's like any data set can be looked through the operation, strategic, and business, right? So that is one trend that we are seeing. We are looking at partnering with all these technology companies. We are able to take those key like future trends and telling the businesses, look, this is what is happening. This is how easily you can take the data and make meaningful, get meaningful information out of that. The other thing that we are seeing, which is very interesting, even yesterday I was talking to another company on manufacturing, is called digital twin. So what it means is like you have a manufacturing process end to end, but there are so many data points that get generated throughout the process, right? From sourcing to all this machinery related stuff to supplying and delivery, right? How do you get a data stream across the board, and how do you get insights? So now technology companies are coming with what is called as a digital twin that pretty much can replicate the data point through a software, and you can see the entire data end to end. So there's a lot of IoT systems that get embedded as part of machines that constantly will give you some key data points to determine the quality of the output, the performance of the machine, when it is going to go bad. Like there are so many data points that these collect. There are a couple of companies that we are working with. We are trying to see how we want to incorporate technology not because it is there, because it can solve a problem effectively. So that is one more trend that we're seeing.
So you're using data for like predictive analysis, basically. That's what
absolutely.
It sounds like. Yeah. So I mean, in simple layman terms, I think a good example, just so people can understand, is I'm a shop owner. And I'm trying to decide, I'm going to look at how well I did during the holiday season in 2021. And I'm going to try to decide how much staff I need for 2022. I can look at how I did in 2021. And based on that, I can predict, okay, we had 1,000 customers come in. And if we had 1,000 customers come in, I'm going to need 10 people to hire for the holidays for additional help. So this is just how simple it is to use your data. How many employees do I need on Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays? You can start trying to look at how busy am I during the holidays versus how busy am I during the summertime or the springtime. And then you can collect that information to help you make recruiting decisions. Do I really need a lot of people working in the summertime? We're slower in the summertime. So perhaps in the summertime, that's when you decrease your staff. So that's what we're talking about in terms of leveraging data. And I think as small businesses, they need to start early, right? Don't start trying to figure out how to collect and especially store the data when you're now a $1 million company, because now that means you're going to have to trace back and start trying to figure out how to pretty much classify all that data. I think the best way to start is right from the beginning when you're starting.
Right.
And what's the number one tip that you give to the businesses in terms of starting to keep and maintain their data like right away and not waiting until they're like, $1 billion company like Amazon, for example?
Right. That's a good question. The number one tip, what do you think?
I think first and foremost, the companies don't realize how much data they are already collecting.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I think it's very important that the data footprint is equal or more important than the business footprint. The companies have to become data oriented from day one. They're not after they become $1 million company.
Yeah.
And even for small businesses too. So I come from a family of small businesses, and I think this is why I emphasize things like restaurants, right? Because maybe people don't think of data and restaurants going hand in hand. But part of this can be, as Nagaraj said, you have all this data, right? So for example, if you have a point of sale system, you're collecting data on what's selling, what's not selling. You just may not know how to leverage that. And one easy tool we found is, at a very basic level, you can work back see who your existing customers are, right? Figure out, okay, this is 60% of my customers fall in this range based on the data we have. Put some extra dollars towards expanding that group. And that could be a very like basic low level strategy. So I think it's definitely this balance of saying, it's not too late, because I think that's what we want to emphasize too, is sometimes I think people feel like they're just lost or unmoored. They don't know where to start. And the reality is they probably already started down the line, and they just need somebody to show them that they've started there.
Right. So those little sticky notes, that you have on your computers can be transformed into actually data that you can see on a dashboard.
Right.
Like this month I made, $10,000. Last month I made $1,000. So what happened? What was the discrepancy? I think that's why data is so important. What do you think is the future of data analytics? Right now, like I said, I did my prediction, and I don't see it going away. I think if anything, we're going to start seeing more businesses really trying to understand. Because to be competitive, right, you've got to know who your consumers are, your customers, your clients, and you're going to have to use that data to try to make sure that you attract and retain, especially for a lot of these businesses. So what is the future, especially of data analytics right here in New Hampshire?
So I think one thing I would say right off the bat is you're right. It's definitely here to stay. I saw a statistic recently, I think it was through Forrester maybe, but 95% of executives surveyed know that data is the future. They have to go there. And the reality is these bigger companies, they have whole data teams.
Right.
So that gulf is only widening because the bigger companies, they can afford to leverage new technologies, new data scientists. So I think that's important understanding right up front. This is the way it's going. That's a fact too. Another startling stat was I saw they estimate about $3 trillion is wasted every year on poor data in the United States economy. And so I think just understanding that at a fundamental level, there's a reason why the big companies are going after this so hard.
Right.
They are going to own that piece of the pie. That's what they want. They know the future is going there. So for us, I think it's going to be about those small to mid-sized companies really being empowered to own their own data and have agency over their own data and make decisions based on that in a way that doesn't sort of feel theoretical or just like overly scientific or mathematic. The reality is I joke, I come from a writing background, actually. So I'm kind of like an imposter in this whole world in some ways, people would think. But I actually, one thing I found is that I had a proclivity towards the story that data can tell, and sometimes figuring out that story is just as important as the data itself. And I think that's probably where things will go. It'll only accelerate.
Oh, absolutely. I was talking to a senior scientist in Washington recently, and he told me that the reason companies are investing so much on hardware, infrastructure, networking is because more and more data is getting generated and will be generated. The variety is increasing, and they want to gain more and more insights.
Right.
So the companies are making a lot of effort towards that. As far as New Hampshire is concerned, considering that UNH is a state university and they have set aside a budget to start programs in analytics, speaks a lot. Recently, I was talking to the vice provost, and she was mentioning how they want to leverage data and make a bigger impact around the communities in New Hampshire. So while we preach about the importance of data, we want to bring it to practice also.
Right. Yeah. And it's like you said, it's when a lot of people hear the word data analytics, it just sounds so complex and just so difficult. And a lot of people don't realize is that they actually do data, daily. Yes. When you're trying to budget out, how much you're going to spend on groceries, when you're trying to budget your monthly bills, and you're trying to figure out, how much money do I need to come up with to afford my mortgage, the gas, how much money can I get a coupon? That's all data right there. So I think we do it daily. And a great example would be, so I spent over 7.5 years in corporate technology operations, and we would just call it reporting, right? We would have milestones we had to meet. We would be asked, do you guys think you're going to be able to meet, X amount of building permits for this month, or X amount of zoning, or X amount of executed license agreements? So for us, it was just reported, which a lot of people probably do like on a daily basis for their work. It wasn't until I really started getting more involved in the tech sector that people are like, data analytics. And I'm like, oh, you mean reported?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I got over 7.5 years experience with that.
Right.
So it's just, this is why I created the show, is because I just wanted to explain things to people in just such a simple way, that there are things going on in technology that are impacting us daily, and we might not know what they are, like AI. People are like, oh, I don't want to use AI. And it's like, do you have a cell phone?
Yeah.
Do you use Google? As AI.
It's as simple as that, yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what do you think is the shape as we close out of technology in New Hampshire, and how we can, just as a state, just really put that spotlight, when it comes to what we're doing with, being innovative?
I think for me personally, like I used to live in Jersey, so now I'm in New Hampshire. When I first came to this UNH, and a lot of people ask me what attracted me to New Hampshire. I said, if you look at UNH itself, I said it's very innovative. First of all, innovative culture, extremely obsessed with students. They want to really make an impact, and they're very focused on long-term management, right? So I think that's a message we have to spread across New Hampshire. Generally speaking, when we work very closely with New Hampshire Small Business Development Council, and even New Hampshire Tech Alliance, and so on and so forth, and right now you are our partner.
Yeah.
And you can see that what we are trying to do is be more inclusive, right? Bring more communities. We see the state will be making a lot of progress. We see the number of companies that we personally have attracted. We are not talking about even the government's efforts, but personally, we when we go out there, we tout for New Hampshire. There are a couple of companies who established a second set of operations in New Hampshire because they saw that the state was putting in effort towards creating this very business-friendly ecosystem supported by academic research. So I think if we continue on this path, there's a great future, and we want to be part of it.
Increase in revenue for the state, so.
Absolutely.
And I would say we say we run like a business, but the reality is we're part of UNH, we're part of Paul College, the business school. And what's great about that is we can really come from a place of curiosity and research. And I think, to your point, when people hear data scientists, they might go, well, what is that?
Right.
I think people sometimes are skeptical too, because there's always that fear, right? If something's abstract, am I getting sold something that I don't need or don't want? So for us, we can really come from this place of genuine curiosity because we work with the college and figure out, and just be honest with our clients. I mean, I think a key takeaway should be this won't solve everything, right? AI has its problems. You see data issues all the time. I mean, Zillow is an example. So these things will not solve everything. And I think recognizing that up front and just saying, where are our strengths? Where can we put our resources to make the most impact short term while also looking long term, developing a strategy long term?
No, I absolutely agree. And I get a lot of people who are always looking to pivot into tech. And one of the things I always say, especially right now where people are probably nervous to pivot into tech with all the layoffs that are going on. But one thing I always say is look at the emerging technologies.
Absolutely.
Look at that's where companies are investing money in. And I think you brought up a good point earlier is look where the big companies are investing money. And as small businesses, if you're trying to figure out how you can stay competitive, look at what the big companies are doing, because that's the trend.
Right.
And that's the trend you want to make sure you follow. So it's been really great having you guys here. I welcome you to come back again anytime. I think it's important for us as a community to fully understand what's going on when it comes to innovation and it comes to technology. So the word of the day today was data analytics, and now you guys know what it is. And I look forward to working with you guys in the future. I think this is great.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
So
we got Andrew and Najaraj. Thank you so much for being here from UNH Business Analytics Center And thank you, everyone else, for watching another episode of Get Tech Smart, and stay tuned for more.